Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Jayden.reads. So today I'm going to be doing another book review, this time for the wonderful Alice Network, which I completely loved. I'm going to start out by giving a little synopsis of the book, but then I'm going to do this book review a little differently. In the back of the book there are some reading group questions that I thought were really compelling, and so I picked 3 of those questions and I want to discuss my thoughts on them with those of you who have read this book. And if you have not read this book, please, please, please read this book and then come back and discuss your thoughts with me. So to begin, this lovely book is set in the aftermath of World War II. I think it's supposed to be about 5 years after the war has finished. Let me double check that. No, 1947. It's only like 2 years after. So there are 2 main characters in this story. One is named Charlie and the other's name is Eve. Charlie was a college student in America, and through certain events, Charlie wound up pregnant without a boyfriend or a husband. After telling her parents decided to take her to Europe to have her little problem taken care of, and she was supposed to get an abortion. But Charlie really only agrees to go to Europe because she wants to find her cousin, Rose. Rose is from France. Charlie and Rose have always been really close. They're about 2 years apart in age, and partway through the war, Rose stopped responding to Charlie's letters. So Charlie knows that there's a pretty high chance that Rose has passed away, but Charlie also knows that a lot of people went missing or unaccounted for during the war. There's a million things that could have happened, and so she's still holding out hope that her cousin Rose might be alive. And in doing some preliminary research before coming to Europe, she discovers that Eve is the last person with any existing information on her cousin Rose. And so at the very beginning of this story, Charlie ditches her mom in Europe and goes to Eve's house to try to see if they can find Rose together. That premise does not do this book justice. This book is so much more than that. Like I said, there are 2 main characters, and so it starts out from Charlie's point of view, but it switches into Eve's point of view every other chapter. And Eve's point of view starts out at the beginning of World War I, where Eve is asked to become a spy in the Alice Network. And reading about this network was the most fascinating thing to me in the entire world. It was actually a true network. A lot of this is based on true events, and a lot of the characters are true people who have just been fictionalized a little bit to fit into this book. Our main characters are fictional, but the people surrounding them, for the most part, are real, which I think is so cool. It's the best kind of historical fiction in my mind. I don't think this will come across as a surprise, but I gave this book a 5 stars, a very well-earned 5 stars, and I would highly, highly recommend it if you like historical fiction, if you like World War II, spies, books that empower women, anything along those lines. Please pick up this book. You will not regret it. Also, just a quick content warning if you decide to read this book. There are a couple scenes that describe, not graphically, but that do describe and contains passages about sexual assault. So just be aware of that going into this. So now we are getting into the book club discussion portion of this video. So if you have not read this book before, please don't watch the rest of this video because I don't want anything about this book to be spoiled for you. So the first question that I wanted to discuss is question 7. And it says, the disappearance of Charlie's cousin, Rose Fournier, I don't know how to say her last name, provides the story's driving search. Did her eventual fate surprise you? Had you ever heard of Orador sur Glane? Don't know how to say that either. How did Rose's fate change the goal of this search? And I have to say, I had never heard of Orador sur Glane, or however you say it. I took 4 years of French, but I have no idea how to pronounce that. But that was very shocking and so sad. I mean, it's one of those things where the more that you learn about the world, you start to learn things that don't, they surprise you when you hear them, but it's also it's not hard to believe that they happened considering all the horrible things that did happen. But I was just shocked that going off of just a tip, and nobody even knows if the tip was true or not, these soldiers were willing to go in and just gun down an entire village, which they knew was full of a bunch of innocent people. It's just so disgusting and upsetting. When I got to that part, was just speeding through it and trying to read it as quickly as I could, because I I had to learn more about it, and I was just so shocked and dumbfounded at how horribly humans can treat other humans. It makes me sick. But at the same time, that's kind of why I feel like books like this are important, because we can't change what happened, but somehow it feels like at least acknowledging it and remembering the suffering that these people went through, I almost feel like if I can remember them, then that's helping them in the only way that I possibly can. And I will say that I was actually fairly shocked to figure out that Rose had passed away. It seemed like the most likely outcome, but there was so much back and forth, and Charlie's hope was so strong that I kind of started to believe that Rose was still going to be alive. And so I was really disappointed when I found out that she had passed away, and in such a horrible way. But I did really appreciate that even though Charlie's main goal was foiled, I guess, that she was still able to think more about herself and think, okay, who am I outside of this goal? And she was able to develop more as a person, and the story continued, instead of just dropping right there and being like, oh, well, I couldn't complete my main goal and there's nothing else to me. Like, no, these characters were very deep, very well drawn out, and there was so much to them. And so even though it hurt and it was hard when Charlie realized she couldn't follow through with her goal of finding Rose, but she was able to find herself, and I loved that. So the next question that I wanted to discuss is question 10. And it says, Charlie decides to keep her baby and Eve decides to have an abortion. Why did each woman make the choice she did? Now, I want to talk about this question not because I want to talk about really controversial topics, and I hope that I don't say anything that offends anyone, but this book was so eye-opening to me. Up until this book, I was not a supporter of abortion at all. And I knew a lot of other people who weren't supportive of abortion but said, in the case of, maybe the mom's life will be in danger, or especially in the case of rape, then I think abortion is okay. And even in those cases, I always thought, no, like, that baby did not do anything to deserve dying. It didn't deserve that fate. And I still feel pretty strongly that abortion is not something that should be happening on a large scale, that it should never be used as a form of birth control, anything to that effect. But Eve's story was the first time, and I haven't heard of very many people, nobody's ever come to me and talked about an abortion or why they want an abortion. I haven't talked to very many people about it. But that being said, Eve was the very first time I heard a story in a situation where I thought that was probably for the best. I know that she hated Renee more than anything, which, who blames her? But for Eve to have to carry the burden of the things that he had done to her, and then literally carry that burden in the form of a baby, that would just be so traumatizing for Eve. And also, that baby would not be born into a good situation. That baby would tie her to Renee for forever. And like she talked about in the book, she felt like if she had this baby that she couldn't escape from Renee, that all of a sudden he would decide he wanted to be a family, and then she would be trapped in this, and that wouldn't be a good environment for her or for the baby. And also, I know this might be very controversial, but this was a time of war. And Eve was doing very needed work as a spy in Lille, or however you say the name of that little town. But she was needed there. And if it turned out that she was pregnant and people discovered that, she wouldn't have been able to continue her work. It's one of those horrible things of like, do you sacrifice one person to save a lot of people? And I don't know the right answer. Once again, I'm not trying to start controversy. I don't want to hurt anybody. But I really love this book in that it was so eye-opening to me and kind of forced me to change how I look at things a little bit. And I love books that can help me see something from a point of view that I maybe didn't understand, and that can help me understand the world better and consider a viewpoint that is not my own. And then the last question that I wanted to discuss is question 12, and it says, there are two kinds of flowers when it comes to women. The kind that sit safe in a beautiful vase, or the kind that survive in any condition, even in evil. The theme of the Fleurs du Mal, evil flowers, yes, carries from Lily to Eve. How does Eve pass it on to Charlie? When do you see Charlie becoming a Fleur de Mal in her own right? How has knowing Eve changed Charlie's life, and vice versa? So I thought it was really, okay, I hate Renee, just like everybody else, but I did think it was really interesting how his love of Baudelaire just kind of went as a theme throughout the entire novel, and this concept of the Fleur de Mal was also a theme throughout the entire novel, and I loved that it was something that Renee brought up, and then in some of her more triumphant moments, Eve was able to use that exact same saying against him and show him that she was a Fleur de Mal and that she did have power over him. She had power over herself, she had autonomy over herself, and that he could not control her, and that she was still her, and that it didn't matter if he was going to smash all of her fingers, it didn't matter what he was going to do. She was in charge of herself, and she was going to survive. I loved that. So as far as the questions of how does Eve pass this on to Charlie and when does Charlie become a fleur de mal, those aren't really the things I wanted to focus on, but what I really loved was the last question that this asked, which was, how has knowing Eve changed Charlie's life and vice versa? Something that I loved about this book was the formation of female friendship, and that even though they were generations apart, Charlie and Eve were able to come together and become friends, even though they were very different, and they grew to love each other in this very protective way, which is something that I think is just so amazing and something that I'd like to see more of. I loved them together. I loved the way they protected each other, the way that Eve became protective and motherly of Charlie, but yet at the same time, Charlie became protective of Eve in the end. I really loved that at the end of this novel, it was Charlie and Eve working together who were able to defeat Renee, like defeat the evil of this book. That Finn, he wasn't there when everything went down. He was coming, he was there to rescue, he was there to help. He was totally valuable and totally needed as a character. But when it came down to it, even Charlie could protect themselves and could protect each other, and that they would, because that friendship was strong and it was there. And I just love that because they were strong when they were together. They were strong because they had each other. And I just think, you know, even though they're fictional characters, if they were real, their lives would never be the same because of the influence that the other person had, if that makes any sense. Like, Eve will never be the same Eve after knowing Charlie, which is something that I think is amazing, and it inspires me to strive to create more relationships like that in my life, where after knowing someone or someone else after knowing me, that they will never be the same person. That just seems like the ultimate goal and the ultimate type of friendship. So that is my book club discussion-y review of The Alice Network. I absolutely loved it. Like I said, 5 out of 5 stars, 100% recommend it. It's one of my new favorite books. So please let me know in the comments what you guys thought of my thoughts on this book, and also just what your thoughts were in general. And if you read any other of Kate Quinn's works and what you think and if I should check them out. Well, thank you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!